Can we start with two big players for you, John Fleck and John Egan? You mentioned during the week about John Fleck going to hospital and John Egan obviously stretched it off. What's the latest on those two?
Yeah, the thorough tests on John Fleck over the weekend, Monday, Tuesday. We've got the results back, so he's being monitored at the moment. We've got no real news regarding his return. So obviously hugely disappointing for on that one. And John Egan's going to be out for 8 weeks. He needs an operation on a dislocated toe. So obviously on the back of a very disappointing injury list and not self-inflicted, as we've always said. In terms of soft tissue injuries, it's a situation where John's gone to block a shot, and you saw the reaction of a committed, brave player straight away. You knew he was in trouble. We all knew he was in trouble, and really disappointing to lose him for 8 weeks.
It must be one of the biggest frustrations of this season, all the chopping and changing through circumstances and injuries.
Yeah, I mean, I think when people are trying to analyse what's the difference between last year and this year, that's been the biggest one. I think from a promoted team coming into the Premier League. The majority of teams, there's some exceptions, but the majority of teams, need to be built defensively solid and have a structure about them, and we certainly did that. 4th best defensive record last year, and I don't think it's all about the goalkeeper as well. There's stats that back that up. Aaron Ramsdale's had more saves to make than what happened last year, but obviously because of the results last year, a lot of assumptions are quickly made regarding the two goalkeepers. But my biggest analysis of it is that to get to the 4th best defensive record, there's continuity in selection, and that 8, as I've said, picked themselves. I can really, in my head, and I think every Sheffield United fan can. So when that doesn't happen, then obviously the chopping and changing, bringing new players into positions. We talked about the Jack O'Connell position, 6 players playing in that position. Issues to Baldock, issues to Stevens, issues to Fleck. Lundstrom has had situations, and the continuity and the flow is affected. So when people talk about losing 1 or 2, and these are established Premier League players, I really scratch my head, because we're not an established Premier League team, and we've lost 8 or 9 of these big players for us, which is going to make it really difficult for us to get that continuity and experience and momentum.
You've also talked about how proud you are of the players for what they've given you this season, but when they're giving you everything and it isn't enough, how challenging is that for you as a manager, and what can you do?
Well, you scratch your head and you try and bring your experience to the table, and you change and you give them different messages, and you try and cajole them, and you try and give them a dig at times, and you go through the whole rigmarole of what you have done previously. And I think every manager will tell you, you're not just a one-trick pony. You try everything in your locker to do your best from them, and maybe at times the only thing that you can do is try and get the best out of them from a work rate and an effort point of view. You can't legislate mistakes. Going back, as I said, from our defensive record, I can't remember last year that the amount of mistakes that we made that led to goals. Speaking to Mark Noble after the game, I know Mark quite well, and I'm always very keen to seek out opinions of people I respect, which I do with Mark and his career that he's had, and talked about what happens at West Ham, and a very experienced team that are flying and under a great manager and some really experienced players. And I asked him what he thought about our team, and he said, from box to box, you've done a lot of things well. Possibly for the first half we were the better team on Monday night, but where it happens, where results are decided, where results were decided last year and they haven't been this year, is individual errors, whether a chance missed or an error that leads to another error that leads to another error. And I think that was the key last year. If we did make a bad decision, somebody else rectified that. Now it seems all of a sudden, as in the first goal, we make a poor decision by not being positive in a pass. We play backwards, and then all of a sudden we're in trouble. And then we make a challenge, and then it's a penalty, and it gets stuck away. And I felt we were well in the game, great foothold in the game against a team that's fourth in the division. Then all of a sudden, a goal out of nowhere through two individual errors, and that's happened all season. I remember the Wolves game. I think I counted in the first five, the first 2 minutes of the game, their first goal. There was 5 errors in the goal, and that's the job is hard enough. Without, as a newly promoted team, I think Scott Parker, who I think has done a brilliant job at Fulham with some talented players, and he's going to be a top manager. He's a top manager now, but he's going to go on to greater things. I think even if you ask him how difficult the league is, if you ask everybody how difficult the league is, especially in that bottom third and bottom half, and especially as a newly promoted side, so. You've got to play error-free football. You've got to make really good decisions. You've got to bail out people when they make mistakes. And at the start, you've got to have continuity and consistency in your team selection that gives you an opportunity of picking results up. And that's where we are at the moment. So if we can, between now and the end of the season, cut out the stupid mistakes, because like I said, any mistakes, any level are going to get punished, and certainly they're going to get punished with the amount of mistakes that we've recently made at Premier League level, and the reason that we're not picking up the points that we want.
You mentioned Scott Parker there. He said during the week that this is a game they have to come out and try and win. Is it almost a must-win for both sides now? And can you see any of the bottom three getting out of this?
Well, we go into every game trying to win the game of football. We didn't go to Man United. We've sat on the crossbar and thinking, we'll have one chance and we have to take that chance. We have a mindset of going and winning everywhere. We've gone up and down the country last year and won games of football. Not so much this year, which I've talked about. And even though people might think it's tiresome, it's the fact, and that's where we're at. But we understand, when you go to Man City, when you go to Chelsea, you're going to get pushed back. I think Scott will say that. Scott's not because he's a football man and he's had a brilliant career as a player, and he'll have a really good career as a manager. And how positive he is, and how positive I am, and other managers are. They'll go to these places expecting to win. We'll go in Saturday expecting to win and wanting to win. Now, if we make individual mistakes and hurt ourselves, then the chances are that we're going to win and are going to lessen. But I understand when we go to Man City, when we go to Chelsea, when we go to Liverpool, when we go to Man United, the odds are if they say yes, and this is a big one for me, and I should imagine Scott feels the same. If they say yes, with all the power and all the ammunition that they've got, they say yes and we say yes, 9 times out of 10, there's going to be a result going in their favour to the big boys. But that doesn't stop you believing, and we'll believe that we can go and win on Saturday. And just as much as Scott and his group that are going well at the moment will feel the same.
And final one from me. As things stand at the moment, do you almost have one eye on next season? Do you have to put some plans in place? And are you concerned about losing any of your big players? I'm thinking in particular Sander Berger. Is that something you've thought about?
I think that, for me, the model of the club is we keep and go again. So, I don't want to lose anybody. Obviously there'll be discussions between now and the end of the season, but I certainly don't want to lose anybody. That's not the model that I'm working to. I'm working to the model of we keep everybody, unless a fabulous bid comes in for one of our players, and I feel it's right that we can't stand in their way, and it's good business for the football club, which has been the same right the way through. Didn't really want to lose David Brooks, but we had to do that bit of business to fund a promotion push, which it did. We signed John Egan and we covered players. And we had to move Dave on, and Brooksy wanted to play in the Premier League. So, the decision at that time was beneficial for the football club. For me, yeah, of course, I think you have to have an eye, of course, of what might happen, but only a little one. But if you're asking me, what I want to do as a manager of this football club. I want to keep everybody. And be nice and strong and see if we have an opportunity. If we do, the inevitable does happen, which obviously we're not in a great position at the moment. Does happen, then we keep and we move forward and we keep that group together and we see if we can win games of football in the league below. But there's still a fight and fire in the belly of myself and the players that we can win games of football between now and the end of the season. If we don't win enough, then understandable, and if we win enough, then fabulous, great.
Cheers, Chris. All the best this weekend.
Cheers.
Hi, Chris. It's Andy from Radio Sheffield here. Just as Tim mentioned, Berger there, where's he at in his recovery right now?
He's off site at the moment. He's having some specialist treatment in London, so no stone uncovered in terms of getting Xander back as soon as possible without re-injuring himself from a sensible way. But as you can imagine, the attitudes of the two boys, which I've talked about for a long time, him and Jack O'Connell, are superb. They want to come back and help the group. They're desperate to get back in, but there has to be a sensible decision on them. So Jack's out on the grass at the moment. We're hoping that he can step up his return to training and return to playing in the next couple of weeks. Fingers crossed he goes through that process, because obviously we have to clear him. And the same with Xander, but both attitudes are brilliant, and as you would imagine they would be.
Appreciate you had two whacking selection problems post the match the other night, but are there any perhaps more minor considerations for Fulham this weekend? Is anybody back? Or
yeah, there is a couple. There's a couple of selection issues, in which I've said, if people think that I just want to chop and change it to show what a brilliant tactician I am, then they're wrong. I want a selected side. I want a side that's consistent. So I don't want to keep chopping and changing, but people keep making mistakes, and I've got to try and find a solution. If people get injured, I've got to try and find a solution in that, whether it's shape, whether it's personnel or whatever. So like we talked about, I'm not going to leave the best players on the bench. I think if this was a game is right for these players, I will do. But consistency, as talked about last year, defensive record. We were never going to score 75, 80 goals in this division. I think that's understandable as a newly promoted team, and every team has a different way of going about it. And obviously ours was a successful one. But that back eight, I wouldn't want to change. Why would I? But I'm having to, because of loss of form as well as injuries to key players, and trying to find a formula that wins us games. And I said to the players yesterday, I picked a team yesterday, I went, I'll be absolutely made up if I don't have to change this team for the next week. I don't want to change the team, but the decision isn't with me, Andy. The decision is with them, and it's on them to show me that they have played well enough on Saturday at Fulham to say, I'm playing the next game. And I've said it for quite a while. I'll be delighted if I can, but in a year where we're making unprecedented mistakes, we're making really poor decisions. One mistake is not getting ironed out by the second. One mistake's leading to 2, 3, and 4. We have to find a solution and players that hopefully can take this forward. And obviously that's been a very difficult one for me this year.
Indeed, it's always puzzled me about this idea of curing mistakes. Whoever the manager is at whatever club, ultimately it's a mistake. It's not a byproduct of not trying or whatever. They just kind of happen, don't they? And when they happen, they seem to happen in 2s, 3s, and 4s.
Well, it has, and it's, as I said, we analyse all the time. We analyse statistically where we were at last year to where we're at this year. Of course we're going to do, because that year was a fabulous season. We analyse this year, what we've done all right in certain games to what we haven't done, but you can't understand or paper over individual mistakes, whether they're it's a situation. I look at the Fulham game that we played at the start of the season, and I look back, and I know it's quite a long time ago. I'm shaking my head and how we've not won that game, and obviously we waited a long time for a win. Because first half we had so many chances. So, these are, individual mistakes. And then the individual mistake, that have led to us conceding goals. And obviously, taking a massive whack into us from our belief and confidence point of view. And the bit in the middle, as I've said all along, and I keep saying it, and as I said, if people think it's, tiresome, or we should be playing this, or we should be playing that shape, or the system works, like I told you, I spoke to Mark Noble on after the game, and I speak to established, trusted, experienced, qualified achievers in the game that know the game inside and out, and say system's all right, but if you make mistakes in that system, the difference between West Ham and us is that they didn't make a mistake. There was nothing in between both boxes, and this is a team that's been in the Premier League for a long time. I look at Fulham, and Fulham have been in the league 15 of the last 20 years, and you understand all the things that brings that football club. 15 years in the Premier League out of 20 years, and we're fighting and battling our way, and this is our third year in 20 years, and the second under me. So, we're behind at times, and we're trying to bridge that gap, and, we feel we can try and bridge that gap. And I look at the likes of West Ham, and they don't make mistakes. They don't make mistakes, and that's the position that we're in. We never made as many mistakes last year, and that was the position that we're in maybe an unprecedented season, a real one-off as a promoted side. But established Premier League players, don't make those mistakes and allow themselves an opportunity of winning games of football. And we've made far too many mistakes. And as you said, I'm not saying to Cian Bryan, Cian understands the personality of you, what you've got to be like in our changing room, and it does me head in as well overall that people talk about not being able to say this to him, not being able to say that to him. Well, in any walk of life, people are allowed to say anything to people in the workplace within reason. So when I criticise somebody, I criticise Cian Bryan, saying, Cian, you can't check back, you need to play forward. You can't make that back pass because it's going to get punished. And it does, it gets punished. So, and then all of a sudden we're back in the game against Chelsea, and it gets punished and we're 2-1 down. It's situations like that. The individual brilliance that comes with the league, Andy, I understand and accept, and you put your hand up to, and you understand that can happen in this league. But individual errors, consistency in performances, consistency in selections has played a huge part why we're in this position. And if we want to pride or respectability or points or get out of this position, we have got to cut all those mistakes out between now and the end of the season to achieve whatever we want to achieve.
That kind of idea of criticism, though, is modern football, isn't it? If you didn't criticise players, or were seen to be doing it, whether it's on the pitch or in front of us, it'd be, why is he not criticising the players? And if you do criticise the players,
I'm not bothered in psychologists or do-gooders or lefties or whatever it is. I don't know whatever you're allowed to say, whatever you're allowed to say. I'm football manager, so I'm saying it as it is. Go and sit in Liverpool's changing room, and can you imagine what they're saying? Go and sit in Manchester United's changing room. Go and sit in Man City's changing room. Go and ask Carl Walker what it's like in their changing room. It's harsh, it's cutthroat, it's business. Produce, play well, stay in the team, right? Don't make a mistake. I'm the biggest supporter, as I've said to him, but I'm after you if you continually do it. I can accept, but then there can't be the continuous part of it, and that is my criticism of the team. And this is, like I said, modern day psychology or whatever. They know I'm not smashing them day in, day out, because they won't go out there and get the results that they've got for the last 4 years if they thought that I was just an absolute nutcase. I am at times, but there's still a little bit of love of me and a bit of empathy in me, and a whole lot of support for my players that I brought into the team, to the football club, and for my football club.
You mentioned Fulham and the match at Bramall Lane. Are they different, better? How do you approach them tomorrow?
Well, as I said, Scott understands the division. He's played in it all his life, and now he's understanding the division as a manager. And I think he's done a fabulous job last year getting a big team out of the division. As I said, 15 out of 20 years being in the Premier League. A lot of fabulous players, brought in some really good players as well. And a tough team, go and win at Everton, tight game against Burnley, drawn a lot of games. And I think, he'll understand how difficult the league is, let alone how I feel about it. And I think sometimes people don't really understand how difficult it is. They just see it as straightforward. They don't see the detail underneath what's happening at clubs. They don't see what the situations that everybody has to deal with at every club. And Scott's had his situations and dealt with them brilliantly, and he's got a real group of players that are positive and they will believe that they can get out of the position. And I think it just shows you how difficult the decision, how difficult the league is. And as I said, people they just don't, on the outside, they just don't realise how difficult it is. But that's the job that we choose and the industry that we want to be in. And when it goes right, it's great, and when it doesn't, it's not so. But Scott's a very talented manager. He's got a group of players that will see us as a big opportunity of tightening the gap at between them and the teams above.
Just finally, on a different tangent, Tim mentioned the idea about the future. I mean, clearly you'll be thinking about it, but is anything tangible being done about, I don't know, contract offers and that type of thing, or does that just wait till the summer?
No, nothing's been said to me regarding anything going forward. But as I said, the plan for me is what I've said. What I've said is that that's the reason. That's the reason for our recruitment that we talked about. That it is going to be difficult, and we are going to flirt with 17th and 16th or whatever, because that's the way it is, and I think everybody understands that with a promoted football club. And going back to the journey that we've been on, and the 15, 20 years, and the 3 and 20 years, that's it. But that was it, to keep your players and go again. And that's what I want to do. I want to keep everybody in the building. And if we do, obviously, the situation happens and we do go down, that we keep everybody, and they've got the attitude and the ability and the drive and the desire to go again and try and have a successful season. And that's where I'm at with it.
Good stuff, Tar.
Cheers, Andy.
Tomorrow. Cheers.
Morning, Chris.
Morning.
Chris, has it been difficult to pick the players up after the West Ham game? Because up until that point, you were enjoying a decent run of form, and the games that you had lost, you'd been in the game until the 90th minute.
I don't think you've done many interviews with me, James, have you?
I've done a few.
Done a few.
A fair few.
I don't have to pick them up. That's up to them. They have to pick themselves up, the professional footballers. They have to go again. They have to take defeat. They have to take disappointment. This is what I'm just saying about, rubbing their heads and, do you want a not bath? Should I put some bubbles in it for you? Are you all right? Do you want your head rubbing? Everything all right with you? Are you sure? Oh, come on. Are you all right to train this morning? Can you come out and train? Come out and train. I know it's a bit cold. I know it's a bit of a boring session. It might be a shape session, or it might be me telling you where you went wrong or telling you about your mistakes. But tell you what, come on. If you can come out, that'd be brilliant. Thanks. They've come out. Hey! Let's get on with training.
In terms of training, in terms of cutting out the individual errors, what have you been able to do on the training ground to try and cut them out? Because it must be you can't
cut out individual errors. You can't cut out that decision. You can't cut out that back pass. That's a thought process. That's a decision made by players. Nobody can cut out anything mistake. Who's an high profile player that's made a mistake recently that's out of the blue? I don't know. Best goalkeeper in the world, best goalkeeper in Europe's made a mistake, but he'll keep trying to get on the ball and trying to do the right thing, and that's what they've got to try and do. They've got to try and get on the ball and try and do the right thing and try not make that mistake again. He hasn't made that mistake for 3 or 4 years. He makes it, he gets highlighted, you get on with it, he'll be all right, I'm sure he will. And our players will get on with it and learn from it. In that position, don't do it again. In that position, put a bit on it. Have that in your head every time that ball comes to me that, oh dear, I've made that mistake, I won't do it again. I did that, Cruyff, as a 17-year-old apprentice at Southampton and got battered by senior players. I did a Cruyff on the halfway line as a 17-year-old player at Southampton in a Hampshire League game, Hampshire County Senior game, with the likes of Matt Letizia and Franny Benali and Ian Hamilton and Phil Parkinson and some experienced boys, and got absolutely hammered for it, battered on the pitch and coming off because I cost them a goal and cost them a result. I never did that ever again. Every time I got in that position, I just had in my head this cold Southampton morning when I was 17 that, oh dear, here we go, I'm not going to do this, and I didn't. I made mistakes, so I obviously made mistakes because I had a bang average career, but I never made that mistake. I made other mistakes, though. I made a lot of mistakes, but I never made them again.
Chris, in terms of, I know you'll never feel sorry for yourself, but when you look at the injury record and John Egan now out for 8 weeks, do you feel like you have been cursed to some extent this season?
Yeah, I do. I feel really sorry for the medical staff because they've been outstanding in our sort of 2 or 3 years. When it goes well, you don't seem to have these injuries, and you seem to be able to dodge the big injuries. But we have big injuries that have hurt us, and you know, I know there's obviously been talk at the start of the season about muscle injuries and overplaying and the amount of games, but we've had very few of them. The injuries have been the likes of John Fleck breaking his back, falling, you know, Jack O'Connell collision with Dean Henderson, John Egan, Ollie Mack falling on his shoulder, you know, and obviously the latest one, John Egan, you know, a block tackle, and he dislocates his toe in there and has to have surgery on it. So yeah, really disappointing and frustrating.
And just final one from me, Chris. What do you make of this current Fulham side? Because it's a very different squad to last season, and it's actually a very different side to the one you played earlier on this season. Yeah,
I think that's the quality of the manager, that he's had that ability to change it, and he's done that. He's had a lot of good players. He was finding out at the start what works and what doesn't, and I think Scott's a really intelligent, smart guy. When I've met him, I always thought he was a smart footballer, intelligent footballer, and he's took that into his management career and young coach as well, obviously through the work that he's done with Fulham's and the academy, and he knows how to coach as well, and he knows what he wants, and they're in good form, and like I said, you know, they're what, 5, 6, 7 points clear of us, so they're finding it doubly difficult, and they are, as I've said, 15 out of 20 years. These are not a team that's been out of the division for 15 years in League One that comes through. They've been yo-yoing for a few years, and previously to that had an incredible run at it. So a mentality of, you know, an established Premier League club that came out, did great to get back in. Had a bit of a spar with everybody at the start of the season. Scotty knows what he wants and brought it through. And these are a side that can go and get a result anywhere, and a side that can go and beat us if we're not right. But I know that we're a side that if we get it right, we can win there as well.
Chris, first of all, as we look at the Fulham game, some would view this as maybe last chance saloon. Do you look at it that way?
Well, I think we've got to get you got to get 10 results out of 14, haven't you? You got to get 10 positive results out of 14. So I think it's fair to say, and you have to accept that as maybe correct.
And when you look at Fulham and how they've done this season, I mean, they've picked up some really good results of late. How do you sum up what they've done?
I just think it shows you how difficult the Premier League is. That, you know, an established Premier League football club, because that's what they are. You know, over the last 20 years, he spent 15 out of 20 years in the Premier League. So that is majority of time a Premier League football club that find themselves out of it, got back up under an excellent manager and a really good group of players that have been there for a few years, and they've added obviously consistently going down and going back up and then going down again and then going back up. Obviously I think it just shows you how tough it is, and I think if you ask Scott, and he'll tell you the same. It's just just absolutely non-stop. For every game against Liverpool, there's a game against Burnley. Every game against Man City, there's one where they're going to be fighting for their lives against Sheffield United, and West Brom, and so they're all different games. But I think Scott is a really smart guy. He was obviously a top footballer in the Premier League and done everything right in terms of his coaching, in terms of working at Fulham with the academy, and then going into the job as a caretaker manager, and then picking that team up that had gone down and getting them promoted at Wembley was a brilliant achievement. And they're fighting as much as everybody else is to stay in the division, and they're trying to close the gap, and would, I should imagine, like to close that gap on Saturday night.
He's a rival, of course, this weekend, Scott Parker, but is he an ally of yours as well?
Yeah, I like him. I just think he's just a proper football guy. He's no airs and graces. His humility about him. He's humble about him. He's not big time. He's not arrogant, but he wants to win. We all want to win, and he understands what the game's about. It's 3 points on Saturday night. We're rivals, and we'll do everything that we can within the laws of the game to get that result for our teams. But I've spoke to Scott a couple of times, and really like him. I think he's done a great job. I think it is tough when you come up, and he's looked and bought and changed around and tinkered, and I think one of the things that they would possibly look at is that maybe what was different to us last year is that we turned them draws into wins, and they've had those draws. And if they'd have turned those draws into wins, which quite easily they could have done, they would have been in a lot more comfortable position. So that's possibly what his approach will be in between now and the end of the season.
And because it'll be billed as such a big game, and it is, how important is it for you to make sure that the players approach it in the right way and aren't wanting to be too cavalier from the off?
Yeah, I mean, we've got to have a structure. If we're too open and cavalier, and it's a game of basketball, then anything can happen. So there's got to be a structure about it, and we know how they play, they know how we play. There's no secrets. There's no secrets in the Premier League. We've not sussed their system, and they've not sussed our system. It's basically, as I've talked about, who makes the least mistakes, and we're making far too many at the moment, and who takes their opportunities when they come up, and if we can get a result like we did at Old Trafford, where 2 or 3 of the opportunities came up and we take them, then we can win. We can win at Fulham, and they know that vice versa, they can beat us.
Obviously, still in lockdown. We're all mentally tired. How mentally tired are you?
Yeah, I can't lie to you, Paul. It's a tough gig. I don't want to sound woe is me or feel sorry for myself, because there's people in a lot worse positions than me, who from terms of a job point of view, not being able to go to work, from a family point of view, and quite privileged that I can still go to work and earn a couple of quid and live my life as close as I can do. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough not seeing everybody. It's tough not being able to get out and live the day-to-day life that we've been used to, well, for forever and a day, really. So it's not normal, it's not natural, and everybody's just trying to get through it. But as I said, I reiterate, there's a lot of people in a lot worse position than me, so at times maybe taking a step back and be thankful that I'm allowed to go to work and be involved in a game I love.
I asked that question though, Chris, because it must be hard after a defeat where in normal times you might be able to do something to blow off steam, whether that's go for a pint with your mates, go for a walk, or go and visit people. You can't do that. No. So I guess by the very nature of this lockdown business that we're in, you're having more time, I guess, to stew over results, aren't you? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, you understand the life of a football manager, that it is 24/7, but even more so now, yeah. And especially for this club, but with me, as you obviously know. So, yeah, I go to the fridge with my wife. Maybe that's the best way of putting it. But she's my best pal anyway, as you know.
I spend my life at the fridge at the moment, mate. Last question. When lockdown does end, what's the first thing you're going to do?
Dear me, when it I'd love the opportunity of getting some supporters back in Bramall Lane. You know, from that point of view, that'll be a special moment that can't come quick enough. I've not really thought about that. I suppose. Yeah, I suppose the obvious is crash down to the boozer and sit in there from as soon as it opens until we get chucked out. And be grateful for every moment that I spend in there, and not moan about anything. Not moan that they ain't got salt and vinegar crisps, or they've not got chili nuts, or they haven't got my favourite drink, or I can't do this, I can't do that. Just be absolutely thankful of everything that I've taken for granted for about 30 years.